Welcome to the first Ubiquiti India live webinar. We'll be talking about best practices for UniFi Wi-Fi setup and management. So for all of you here who use UniFi or want to use UniFi, this will be a great way for you to learn about not just all our products in the UniFi range, but also on how to best set up your products and also manage UniFi on an ongoing basis. So product overview. As you all know, this is one of our most popular products, the UniFi access points. That's kind of the bread and butter of the entire UniFi network. Most of you here must have had experience with UniFi access points, but just so you know, there are obviously a range of access points. These aren't all of them, but these are some of the main ones here in terms of people using it here in India. So we have the UniFi UAP AC Lite, which is the smallest access point. It's a 2x2 MIMO, dual 2.4 as well as 5 gigahertz. You should know that all our access points are dual band. All our access points are 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. So most of the information here is what you can read, but we go from the UAP AC Lite to the UAP AC LR. Then we go on to the UAP AC Pro, Nano HD, and XG is one of our kind of highest performing access points, which has max users of 750 users per access point, and also has a 5 gigahertz radio rate of 1733 Mbps.
Right. I would also like to add that the UAP-XG has a dedicated backlink for wireless uplink. Unlike the other APs which use its own radio, that is the 5 GHz radio for wireless uplink, the UAP-XG has a dedicated 5 GHz uplink which works at 733 Mbps. So that way you'd be able to get better speeds over APs that are wirelessly uplinked.
But obviously, as you go towards the right, the bigger the AP gets in terms of the speeds offered and user supported, the price also increases. Some of the most popular access points we have are the UAP AC LR and the UAP AC Pro. Those are some of the most popular access points we have here, but increasingly the Nano HD as well as the HD are also becoming very popular. Both Nano HD and HD are for high density environments. So if you have a lot of users connecting to your access points, those are some of the access points you can go with. We also have two outdoor Wi-Fi access points. Many installations of ours happen outdoors. So we have the UAP AC Mesh and the UAP AC Mesh Pro. One thing is that you can also buy an external antenna called the UME-D, which is the SKU, which can be attached to the UAP AC Mesh to kind of increase coverage for the access point.
Right. I would like to add further, the mesh APs, they also support multi-hop. So if you have multiple APs that are in a particular area, and if there's a wirelessly uplinked AP, it will automatically hop on to any of the APs which are providing better signal to them. So that way, if you have multiple APs, the link won't go down. So the uplinked AP will automatically connect to one of the wired APs which provides a better signal.
We also have a few new products here. One new product is the UniFi Flex HD. We're going to just show you a quick video on getting a better idea on how this product can be used, and then we'll go quickly into some of the technical specifications. So as you can see in the Flex HD, it supports a number of different installations. The unique thing about this AP is that its shape is very different from the other APs, and it also enables you to place it on a table or ceiling mount or wall mount or pole mount. There are a number of different mounting features. See in this example, you can also see the AP is just centrally placed on a table. So these are really good for situations where people want different kinds of access point placements. We also have a range of managed UniFi switches. We have some PoE as well as non-PoE switches all the way from 8 port switches to 48 port switches. We also have the US16XG, which is our 10 gigabit switch. The important thing to note with our switches is that these are the only switches that can be managed with the UniFi controller. So if someone has an entire UniFi network where they have UniFi access points and they desire to manage it through the controller, it's important that they also get UniFi switches for them to continue using the entire system on the UniFi controller. Third-party switches are not supported by our UniFi controller.
Right. So the Gen 2 switches are a new line of switches which have been introduced in UniFi. So these switches are they have better processing, they have better cooling than the previous switches. They are much more quieter, as in the noise level of the fans are much lower than the previous versions. These are Gen 1 switches. And these switches also have an integrated screen, a small LCD in place of the Ubiquiti logo, which was on the earlier models. So the screen will show you basic information about your network, the CPU, and the memory performance of the switches. And the other good thing about these switches is that it has dual power supplies. So in case if you are running out of AC power or there's a power cut, you can power it using any of the DC converters or batteries or smart powers. That is a URPS, which is another product by UniFi from Ubiquiti, which can help you power any of our devices, especially switches. Right, so these are the new models that have been introduced. There's a 16 port PoE switch, there's a 24 port PoE switch, and there are the Pro models which are 24 and 48 port switches. Right, so the 16 port switch has 16 1 gig ports, and the 24 port switches it also has 24 1 gig ports and two SFE ports. Right, do note that the SFE plus ports are only included in the 48 port model.
Also, for a complete switch comparison, you can go to our website, switch.ui.com, and you can see a comparison between all our UniFi switches. We won't go into too much detail here right now, but this will really help you see the difference between the Gen 2 switches and Gen 1 switches. Obviously, Gen 2 is now a newest line of switches which will be coming to India over the next couple of months. So we definitely recommend people read up about it because these are going to be really good selling items to give users enhanced performance and enhanced quality of their network.
Right, so most of you must be aware about the UHG. Those are the two routers that were initially introduced in the UniFi line of products. Right, so there is the UHG and the UHG Pro 4. Right, so the difference is that the UHG only has three Ethernet ports. However, the Pro 4 has also has two SFE ports which can be used as LAN or WAN. Right, so all the routers that we have support port remapping. So you can configure any port to work as a WAN or a LAN. So let's say that if you want to use the LAN port, SFE port as a LAN, you can change that in the controller itself and switch the existing WAN port, which is mapped to E2 and E3 and convert it into your LAN ports. And both the routers also support load balance, that is weighted load balance and failover. DPI is kind of a software thing which provides you details about all the websites that have been visited and the amount of data that was consumed while visiting each and every website. The other options are SNAT, which is let's say that you have multiple IPs, they can be mapped onto the UHG, and you can create NAT rules so that it can be linked to multiple internal hosts on your LAN. Port forwarding can be configured by the controller, right? So that's basically DNAT. Firewall policies, the reason we say that it's advanced because it's a stateful firewall. So you can basically filter or block packets based on the state. That is, unlike a stateless firewall, which does not inspect the state of the packets, the USGs can do a stateful inspection. About inter-VLAN routing, this is something which is enabled by default. However, using the advanced firewall rules, you can also create restrictions so that VLANs are not able to communicate between each other. The next is site to site. Okay, so site to site, there are two options. There is site to site over IPsec, and there is site to site over OpenVPN. And if you're using multiple USGs, there is a third option which is auto IPsec. So all you have to do is when you have multiple USGs adopted into different sites, you just need to select auto and apply. There are no front end changes that are needed. Everything happens in the background, and a VPN link will be automatically established. So that takes you less than 20 seconds to create a VPN link between two USGs that are adopted into different sites but in the same controller. Traffic segmentation, that is QoS, is basically smart queues. So if you have a WAN link which has congestion, you can enable smart queues, and that should help you deal with the congestion and improve the latency.
So one of the important things to note about any of Ubiquiti's products, and especially products like the USGs, these are all products that are one-time purchases. So unlike many of the other firewalls in the market where people are paying lakhs of rupees per year to have a firewall and have a firewall on the internet and manage their security settings, using something like the USG or the USG Pro 4 lets you have a firewall lifetime with only a one-time cost for the device itself. Everything else, all these things that were mentioned, are included with the device and can be managed through the free UniFi controller. So this is all a one-time cost, and there are no ongoing costs to manage a firewall with Ubiquiti, unlike many of the other companies where people might be purchasing firewalls separately.
In regards to the controller, I would like to add that the controller has a feature of cloud access or remote access. So that way, even if you are not local or present at the site where your controller is deployed, you can still access the controller over the internet, that is from the UniFi portal, and make any changes that you would do on the local controller remotely as well. So that can help you manage your network even if it's set up in a different location.
So talking about the UniFi controller, we'll go into more detail soon, but the Cloud Key is a device that actually houses the UniFi controller. It's a physical device that houses the UniFi controller. So if you don't want to host your controller on a cloud or host it on a server or on your computer, you can always buy one of our Cloud Keys, which you can just plug into the switch and the controller will be running 24/7. It's a very low power consumption device, and using this you can very easily just remotely access your controller from anywhere in the world. So for larger networks or even smaller networks, we highly recommend purchasing a Cloud Key. Although it's not required to use a controller, our controller is a free controller which can be downloaded from our website. This is a very easy way to host your controller locally 24/7 with low power consumption. And Praveen, to answer your question once again, the UniFi Security Gateway is a one-time purchase. It's a security gateway, which is a routing device, which has the firewall in it. Ubiquiti never has any devices or any services that require a renewal every year. So, and then no firewall services will have to be renewed every year. This is a one-time purchase that you would buy the USG with, and you can use your firewall without any other expenses. So one of our newest products here is the UniFi Dream Machine. It's one of our latest products, and it's been a very, very popular product recently. It's so as you've seen earlier, we've had access points, we've had switches, we've had security gateways, and we had the Cloud Key controller. So what the UniFi Dream Machine does is it combines all four of those devices into one product. So it's a small router as such, which has integrated security gateway, so it offers advanced firewall policies and threat management. It also has a gigabit switch. It has a 4-port gigabit switch. It also has its Cloud Key included, so this itself has a controller in it, so there's no need for a separate controller purchase and No need to host your controller anywhere. This device itself hosts the controller. And then it also has a 4x4 enterprise access point. So it also has a very, very powerful access point. All in one device that is a fraction of the cost if you had to purchase 4 devices separately. So what's important here is that it's a really good device for small homes and small business setups where you have only a few access points, but you don't want to purchase all these separate devices. The UDM can be directly connected to your internet modem and you can get started immediately in a matter of minutes. You can also then attach additional switches and additional access points to the UDM to scale up your network with no limit to how many devices you can keep attaching and keep extending your network with. Our latest product is the UniFi Dream Machine Pro.
Right, so the UDM Pro is very similar to the UDM. The only thing that's different here is that it has 8 ports for LAN and 2 SFP ports for your WAN connection. So if you look at the picture, there is an Ethernet port, out of which the Ethernet port is WAN 1, and there are 2 SFP ports, out of which one of them can be used as WAN and the other one will be a LAN. The advantage of a UDM Pro is that it has an option to mount a drive. Okay, that's in the center. So once the drive is mounted, okay, you will be also able to install UniFi Protect. All right, so UniFi Protect is a software that is used for managing the cameras. Unlike the UDM, the UDM Pro as well has a controller inbuilt, so you would not need a cloud key or an additional device to install a controller and manage your devices. And one other thing about UDM and UDM Pro is that they have a much faster CPU than the USGs. Okay, so this way, when you're using services like IPS or IDS, which are CPU consuming, you would still be able to achieve up to 850 Mbps on a UDM and up to 1 gigabyte on a UDM Pro. That is without any loss of performance while using IPS. However, similarly on the USG and the USG Pro, the performance is almost scaled down to 50% when you use IPS or IDS. So the newer CPU is one of the biggest advantage of the UDM and the UDM Pro.
This is a great device which if it's kind of for large networks, this is a great device to have because it has a switch, it has its firewall, and also it has an inbuilt UniFi controller as well as a UniFi Protect controller, which is for our cameras. So this is the newest UniFi device that we have in the market, and right now we're on the website. So after this, I definitely recommend people to look at the UDM Pro website because this is a very big device that's going to disrupt not just the firewall market, but also improve experiences for customers that are currently using UniFi and also want to integrate UniFi Protect into the same network. We also have a range of UniFi cameras that you may have heard about. We recently launched our range of cameras, the G3 Bullet, the G3 Dome, the G3 Flex, and the Pro. All these cameras offer 1080p resolution and have various different mounting options as well as infrared and low light sensitivity options. All these cameras can be managed through the UniFi Protect software, which comes inbuilt into the CloudKey Gen 2 Plus. So the CloudKey Gen 2 Plus is a device that has the UniFi controller inbuilt as well as the UniFi Protect controller inbuilt. And once you have that device connected to your network, you can access your videos from anywhere in the world, either log into your UniFi Protect account or even download the UniFi Protect mobile app. And you can access your live videos as well as your video history. These cameras are indoor as well as outdoor cameras. As you will see, the G3 Pro is a weatherproof IP67 weatherproof camera.
Right, so we're just going to interrupt and answer some of the questions that were asked in chat. Praveen Kumar, you had a question. Praveen Kumar's question was already answered. Ashish Gupta, you wanted to know if USG Pro would act as a full-fledged firewall. Not sure what you mean by full-fledged, but like I said, it's a stateful firewall. So you can create any kind of firewall rules that depends upon the packet states. Apart from that, like I said, the firewall also supports DPI. So you can also create DPI-based firewall rules on the USGs as well as the UDM. Apart from that, it also supports IPS, that is intrusion prevention system, as well IDS, that is intrusion detection system, and it also has a support for GeoIP, which is in case if you want to block traffic from a particular country, you can create rules so that traffic from that entire country will be blocked. That is the traffic to that country or from that country. That is up to you. I hope that answers your question. Praveen Kumar, you wanted to know about the UDM Pro. Yes, it's one device. The device has an internal drive as well as an option to mount a secondary hard drive, which can be used for installing all the UniFi softwares. That is UniFi Protect, UniFi Access, or UniFi Talk, which is the VoIP software.
So for UDM Pro, we definitely recommend people look at our website. It has a lot of information about UDM Pro. It's kind of one device itself which integrates a number of different things, and not just current but also future things like the access controller and the talk controller, which is in beta, which will help you also integrate future Ubiquiti devices such as access, such as our VoIP phones, and also current products like our cameras and our access points, all in just one device. So it's a controller that has all these integrated in it, and not just a controller but also it's a switch, and it also has very advanced firewall policies that you can manage through it. This is an example of how in the future your UDM Pro could, well, this is a current example of how the UDM Pro can connect to a switch, can connect to your devices, can connect to your cameras, can connect to access points. Again, there's a lot more information about this online and on the data sheet, so we recommend you to look at that after this presentation.
Right, Vikas Singh, to answer your question, IPS and IDS can detect ransomware, but it will depend upon the signatures that have been built into it. So if there are some newer signatures which are not in the database, there might be some cases where and the ransomware might go undetected. And to add to it, the signatures are updated every 24 hours. So and this happens automatically in the background. So most of the newer signatures should have the latest threads that have been included in it automatically. And in regards to hacking a server when using RDP, that is something that the USG or the UDM will not protect you against.
Dhawal, you had a question on the outdoor devices. These are our two outdoor devices, the UAP-AC Mesh and the UAP-AC Mesh Pro. The Mesh supports a maximum of 60 users and the Mesh Pro supports a maximum of 120 users. So depending on your needs, Prasad, I saw you also have the same question. Depending on your needs, both devices are really good devices for outdoor. If it's a smaller outdoor environment and you don't expect too many users, the Mesh is also obviously the cheaper device that you can go with. It does support fewer users and slower speeds, but it can be very good if you just have a handful of users there. But for larger outdoor settings, we're expecting around 80, 100 users or so, or even more. We definitely recommend going for the UAP-AC Mesh Pro. It has 3x3 MIMO on both bands, as opposed to the 2x2 MIMO that the UAP-AC Mesh has, and also supports higher aggregate throughput. as you can see in the 2.4 and the 5 gigahertz radio rate. Dhaval, you also had a question about how, if there are more than 60 users, how will traffic divide between devices? We're going to get onto that. We're going to get talking about load balancing at a future point in this presentation. So your questions should be answered there.
Praveen, in regards to application filtering, that is something which is possible, but the list of applications are limited. Only the ones that have been added to the DPI signatures can be filtered or blocked. So that is also related to the question that Bimla asked. If you can, I'm so sorry, because saying if the gateway can block YouTube or Google, yes, it can block YouTube, but as you must be aware that most of the Google services are tied to each other. So when you block YouTube, there is a possibility that other services might be affected because of the Google services being blocked. But yes, when you block YouTube, YouTube will be blocked and you should be able to use the web version of Gmail. Bimla, in regards to your question about software controller limit, there is no such limit for devices or users. It all depends upon what the controller is running on and how many users you have. So basically, the controller is something which collates data and keeps all the statistics that have been reported by all the devices. So more the devices, there will be more data that is generated. So you will need a device that can store a large amount of data. For example, UDM Pro or CloudKey Gen 2 Plus, which has an option of adding an external drive, would be best suited if you're having over 1,000 clients in your site or your network.
I just want to clarify that these outdoor devices are outdoor access points. They are not point-to-point, point-to-multi-point devices. I know there's a question about how many kilometers. These devices won't have range in kilometers. For that, we'd have to look at our Air Max devices, which we would talk at a later date. Right now, we're only talking about our indoor UniFi access points. So these are outdoor access points and not point-to-point devices. We have a separate range of Air Max, which have point-to-point devices.
Harish, in reference to your question, the rules that we create, any firewall rules, either on the USD or the UDM, are all signature based. That is, even the IPS and IDS is signature based. We do not have a feature that will scan or filter traffic based on behavior.
And Junaid, as of now in India, we don't have any 4G SIM-based outdoor or indoor devices available. Okay, moving on. Thanks to you all for your questions. We're going to move on to device selection. Here we're going to talk a bit more about what do you have to keep in mind when selecting the right UniFi device.
So basically, we would need to make sure that we understand the requirements that we have for the different scenarios that we see. We need to make sure that we are using the right kind of frequency for the available clients that are going to be connecting to your Wi-Fi network. The clients which would be connecting, are they supporting MIMO technology, which is single user MIMO or multi-user MIMO? If you have multi-user MIMOs, they can be used on HD devices. The number of supported users, again, it's not a hard limit to have 60 users or 120 users, as shown in our data sheets. These are these are tests which have been done, and these have been the best ideal situation, clients which are connected to the APs. So no hard set limit over here, but you can connect more than those devices, almost more than 200 devices. However, that is going to affect your throughput overall. Again, looking at the different clients that would be connecting, we would need to understand how many clients, what are the different types of clients which are going to connect. We need to make sure that if at all we are looking for 2.4 gigahertz clients, these would be having slower speeds, but the range of this, the radio which is there in the APs are going to provide a longer range as compared to 5 gigahertz. When we talk about 5 gigahertz, we are talking about faster speeds. If we want the clients to have better speeds, more than what 2.4 gigahertz can ever think about, we can use 5 gigahertz radios. So MIMO technology is one of the technologies which has been implemented by IEEE standards. This is basically having multiple antennas on one particular access point. These antennas are then used for different streams to go ahead and provide connectivity or transfer traffic to different clients which are supporting these streams. When we talk about multi-user MIMOs, these access points, which are HD access points, they will go ahead and support multiple clients at the same point of time, which means that they would be sending out streams to different clients at the same point of time. This is called multi-user MIMO, which is the use of multiple antennas which are integrated on the access points, and this actually helps out a lot with throughput. There is a lot of differences with single user MIMO, because single user MIMO is going to be having multiple antennas but still will be able to communicate only with one particular client at a point of time. However, multi-user MIMO can communicate with a lot of different clients. So if you see the example on the screen over there, you can communicate with a laptop, which is going to be a 3x3 MIMO, which means it's using three antennas from the same access point communicated in the same direction. And then again, the speeds are going to be much more higher than what a 1x1 MIMO device, which is shown as a mobile phone over there. So the UAP AC HD product line that we have, the different models that we have for AP HD supports multi-user MIMO. The example clearly shows that you would be able to communicate with multiple clients at the same point of time. However, this is not really this cannot be done on all the clients, because the client should also support multi-user MIMO at the same point of time to take advantage of this new feature that we have from IEEE.
So, as mentioned earlier, this is one of our products called the UniFi AC HD. It has multi-user MIMO. So unlike on the left, where you see single user MIMO, where there's one stream with one device at a time, there's multi-user MIMO here, which actually supports multiple streams with multiple devices at a time. So this is extremely helpful for larger settings like auditoriums, stadiums, conference rooms, etc., where you're going to expect many users using internet at the same time. So not just the UAP AC HD, but we also have the UAP AC Nano HD, which has multi-user MIMO. The Nano HD is one of our fastest moving devices. The advantages there is that it's a much smaller device than the UAP AC HD. In fact, it's actually the smallest device we have, smallest access point we have. In addition to that, it also has it's HD device on top of that, so it is suitable for high density environments, like think about exhibition halls, conference rooms, auditoriums, etc. The Nano HD is one of the highest ever devices that we have in terms of performance to price ratio. So for the price you'd be paying for Nano HD, the performance you get is one of the highest in the market. So one more thing you look at when deciding which device to use is throughput.
Okay, so since we talked about UAP HD, UAP HD is a line of products. To be honest, there are like 4 different types of models which are available. Nano HD, UAP HD, the Flex HD is also one of the models under the HD. When we talk about HD, we are talking about IEEE standards, which are for 802.11. 802.11, and this is basically for the Wave 2, which is available right at this point of time. So if you look at these access points right now over here, you would see the difference in the speeds which are available for 2.4 gigahertz radios as well as 5 gigahertz radios. If you look at HD and XG, they have the maximum throughput which is available for 2.4 gigahertz as well. But this is again the aggregate speeds or throughputs that you could get, which means that is the combined speed of all the clients, which would be up to 800 Mbps for 2.4 gigahertz radios. As well as for 5 gigahertz radios, again, the XG, since we talked about this, it is having a couple of radios in it, which will be useful for adding twice as much as clients, which means that it will have an aggregate throughput of 1733 per two radios.
And one more thing in the UAP XG, Ashish, I think you asked about it. So the unique thing about this device is that it also has an additional 5 gigahertz radio, which can be used for meshing. So if you actually have a wireless uplink setup, which we'll get to in more detail, you can actually use that external radio just for the wireless uplink, and then use another radio for the users, which really helps in performance of the UAP XG.
Apart from that, UAP XG is also consists of a couple of LAN ports. Now, one of the LAN port is a 10 gig LAN port, which is available on the XG, as well as one gig LAN port, which is available. Which means if there is a daisy chain that you want to do, or maybe connect another device to your APs, you have got a couple of options over here, which is maybe an AC Pro, where you can use a secondary port to connect another device, maybe a camera or something which you want to have on your network. The HD also has a secondary port which can be used for daisy chaining other devices, as well as the XG. Again, XG is the I would say the best suited devices for daisy chaining, as well as adding more content or adding more devices to your network. Vikas, I think there is a question that you asked: how many concurrent users is in a starting device, and how is an AC Pro? Well, AC Pro has been the best model that we had in terms of connectivity, in terms of stability, and also in speeds. So again, the number of max users when we talk about this is what we have tested in our labs to find out how many maximum clients can give the best kind of throughput. However, you can add more devices which will help you connect to the network. However, the throughput is going to be a little lesser than we expect. So there is no hard set limit again for any kind of concurrent users for any of the devices that we have. However, it depends on the requirement that we have relating to throughput. Sunil and Gorty, about hotspot, we will get back to you in a bit when we talk about the controller.
As you can see, max users in the starting device, which is the UAP AC Lite, we've set max users at 60, but as mentioned earlier, there's no hard set limit on max users or concurrent users, so it really depends on the usage. What we recommend is the maximum is 60 users for the UAP AC Lite, and then going all the way to 750 users for the UAP XG. But once again, it really depends on the throughputs desired, and generally the network available, and that depends on, yeah.
So when we talk about max users, guys, really need to understand what is our requirement. Is it a requirement just to provide access to different wireless clients for just the access of it, or to provide the right kind of throughput? For the best throughputs, I think we always suggest to have a maximum of 30 devices, to be really honest, for one particular access points, or maybe one particular radio that we have in an access point. So if in case you are planning for a high density environment, we would always suggest you to look at the numbers which are a little lower, so that you get the best throughput. Beneath the throughput mentioned is the total upload and download. That is correct.
Moving on, we're going to be discussing now on planning and configuration. Here we're going to talk about how you can use the available Ubiquiti devices to plan your network and then also configure and manage your network. This is one of the most important sections here as we'll be talking about the UniFi controller.
Okay, so the best thing about our UniFi devices is that these devices are totally scalable, which means that it is not restricted to 10 access points or 20 access points or 2 switches or 20 switches. You can certainly go ahead and scale the whole network as per your requirement. So if in case you require a lot of access points, you can certainly go ahead and add those access points to the network. So there is absolutely no kind of limits over there as such for the network. So scalability is one of the best things that you can have from a unified network. When we talk about scalability, again, we need to really understand that the right kind of configuration and the right kind of planning has to be done to have a scalable network.
And just one more thing, this is where really Ubiquiti comes on top compared to many of the other products out there. If you see many of the other manufacturers out there charge you separate licensing fees for your access points. They may charge you for separate controller fees. You may be paying ongoing recurring fees for your controller which change or increase every year, and you have no real say on how much you'll be paying every year for your products. The thing with Ubiquiti is that all our devices are one-time purchase. All the software that comes with the devices are completely free. The firmware updates as well are completely free. In many other products here, you may have to pay for additional advances in the firmware. Ubiquiti is continuously working on new firmware launches, and the firmware launches can always be downloaded from a website and automatically then adopted onto the access points through the controller itself. So that's one really, really important thing to remember when you're talking to customers about Ubiquiti over many of the other brands, that from a cost point of view, don't just look at the cost of buying the devices in the first year. The cost needs to be looked at from a 5-year and ongoing basis, because that's really when you see the value of using a Ubiquiti product, because after the first time you install it, you're never going to be paying any more fees. And also in terms of scaling your network, if you have one office, say with 10 devices, and you decide to add 2 more offices and you want to buy 20 more devices, again, you won't have to be paying anything more in terms of adding those devices to your controller and managing those devices, because Ubiquiti has unlimited scalability at no extra cost from a software standpoint.
Demo.ui.com is a website where you can go ahead and look at the live controller that we have. We have put in some kind of simulation over there, which would give you an idea how access points can be deployed in different scenarios, where they can go ahead and be placed. What is going to be the right kind of speeds available on the different access points which have been deployed. Just give me a second. Let me just try to pull up the controller. Okay, here it is. So if I look at demo.ui.com, this is basically a kind of a simulation which is done for a couple of different scenarios that we have. So at this point of time, we see that this is for the FedEx Forum. This is one of the stadiums which is there in US. The whole stadium is is kind of providing Wi-Fi for the clients which is available. Now, just imagine a stadium would have a huge number of users, and to deploy such kind of a scenario for Wi-Fi, it is going to be a really big challenge. So what you could do is you could go ahead and check this out, and you could see that under the maps, the floor plan over there, you would see that different access points are connected, and how they are providing Wi-Fi to the different regions and different areas. So as I said, the more the access point, the better, for better speeds and better throughput. You can always go ahead and use as much as access points required if at all there is a high density environment. If you look at this, if you look at demo.ui, you can also add a floor plan just to find out what exactly is going to be the best place to mount your APs, what is going to be the best speeds you're going to get, what is going to be the coverage, what are the devices which can be used. You can also use a designer floor plan which can add different materials like glass walls, brick walls, dry walls. You can add all those things onto the floor map, and it will give you the right kind of coverage that is going to be providing by the access point.
So as you can see here in the controller, you can upload your own floor plan. You can upload your own image of a floor plan. Then once you upload that image, you can edit it, you can scale the image, you can add walls, you can decide the material of the walls, the thickness of the walls. And once you put your floor plan up, you can actually place Ubiquiti devices on there. So depending on which devices you want, you have all the devices here which you can place. And once you place the devices, you can get a better idea of how the devices will be on the floor plan of yours, what range, what coverage your devices will have. You can also switch between 2.4 and 5 gigahertz coverage. So even before setting up your first UniFi installment, using the UniFi controller's floor plans, which is under the map setting, that's really helpful to just do a general survey, look at your floor plans, look at which are the best devices you'll be placing, look at what coverage you get, look where your hotspots, where your black spots would be. So definitely recommend people to check out our tool here, which enables you to upload your own floor plan and add devices and design your best UniFi network. As you see, this is a screenshot of the controller where you can go ahead and you can add your own access points, you can add your own switches, and you can see what kind of coverage you're getting. You also have the option to add additional devices then to see how you can improve the coverage.
Okay, the second best thing that we have is another app which is almost very useful as the controller is to find out the right kind of requirements that you have, the right kind of throughput that you would require, the right kind of coverage that you would have. Is the Wi-Fi Man. This is a mobile app which can be installed on any Android or iOS devices. And this Wi-Fi Man app can help you find out. This is basically like a spectrum analyzer, like any other spectrum analyzers that you use. But this is, basically designed by us, and it is very useful when we are performing a site survey. As regards to site survey, there are a couple of things that we need to make sure that we understand. We need to understand what is the requirement, where exactly the devices are going to be planned, deployed. To set up your access points, you basically have to create a test SSIDs, turn on the TX power high, move around to find out where exactly is the dead spot, so that there is a low signal, and you could go ahead and arrange these access points in a way that it is providing the best kind of coverage.
So along with the UniFi Maps feature, the Maps tool, this is a really great tool which helps you plan your network and also understand which are the best UniFi devices. Should you be using an AC Lite? Should you be using a Pro? Should you be using an HD? What signals are you getting? What coverage are you getting? So this is a great device, and not just that, but it's also a device where you can look at other channels, look at channel interference, and check out which other channels are there in your nearby environment to decide how best to configure your network. Additionally, it also has the speed test, which you can use then at the same time when checking your network. So, as many of you might know, the UniFi controller works based on software-defined networking. It's not a hardware controller. It's not a big box that you're going to have to keep somewhere in your electrical room and find space for, and it's going to take up a lot of space and power. It's a software network, software controller, which means that it's all based on software, and it can also be accessed from the cloud remotely. Once again, this is one of the UniFi controller is one of the biggest reasons why people all over the world, thousands and thousands of people all over the world are moving over to UniFi for their Wi-Fi needs, because this controller is a free controller. It supports an unlimited number of devices, an unlimited number of sites. You can keep adding new sites, new devices, new users, and you'll be paying nothing extra to use this controller. Again, as we spoke about, the software is completely free. You can add unlimited APs at no cost, and it's also very easy and intuitive to use, which we will be talking about shortly.
You kept hearing about the UniFi controller. So let us tell you what exactly a UniFi controller is again. UniFi controller is basically the device, the kind of software which would manage your Wi-Fi network or your UniFi network. If you look at the screen right now, you would see that there are different ways to have a UniFi controller. You can have it, you can install it on a Windows machine, a Linux machine, or a Mac OS. You can have a separate device altogether, which we have created. These are the cloud keys, the UDM and the UDM Pro, which has the UniFi controller on it installed itself. You can also upload the UniFi controller if at all you want to have web access directly to the AWS. You can have an instance over there on the web services like AWS and Azure, and you can access the devices from there, the controller from there itself. This is basically a simple setup that we have created over here, which has a security gateway, a switch, an access point, and a cloud key setup over here. This cloud key is basically the heart of your Wi-Fi network or your UniFi network. It controls everything on your UniFi network. The helpful links down over there are more to do with the downloads which are available, the newer controller downloads which are available on ui.com/download. You can always have, so all of these different controllers that you see, the local machine, the cloud keys, the web-based controllers, all of these can still be accessed remotely. To access them, you would have to turn on the cloud access settings on your controller and then simply go ahead and access it from unifi.ui.com. For creating, for having access to unifi.ui.com for your devices, you would require to have an account on account.ui.com. Sunil, you asked me about Azure. Azure is basically a web service, just like Amazon Web Services. Azure is, I think, from Windows, from Microsoft, and they have like a server up in the cloud where they provide spaces. You could go ahead and install the UniFi controller onto a space. These are all paid services, to be honest. I'm not really sure what exactly is the cost for having those instances on Azure or AWS. However, there is always a possibility for you to go ahead and put up a controller over there, and that would be accessed from the web itself. This application was okay. Basically, on the AWS or Azure, you would have an instance of a Linux. I think a kind of an instance. It's basically like having a computer on the cloud itself, where you would go ahead and install certain softwares. And when I say certain softwares, it is not limited to just the UniFi controller. You can also have your different softwares which you require to have online, like WebEx services and different things like that. So yes, you can simply install the UniFi controller on the Linux instance of AWS or Azure. And I'm sure there are more web services other than these. We just put up a couple of examples over there.
We spoke about the cloud key, of course, but definitely remember that the UDM and the UDM Pro also now have the UniFi controller inbuilt. The UDM Pro has not just the UniFi controller, but also the UniFi Protect software, which can be used for UniFi cameras. So for much larger environments, or where you want to have all your UniFi inbuilt into one device, definitely recommend going for something like the UDM Pro, which once again not just has your controller, but also has a switch, also has your firewall, and also has your UniFi Protect software inbuilt. So many of you on this chat here probably are managing multiple devices. It's not just your one home network or one client's network that you are managing. You're probably managing a number of different clients, a number of different sites, maybe all over India, maybe even all over the world. The advantage that your UniFi controller gives you is that you can add multiple sites. So you can manage different sites from a dashboard. You can just simply add new sites and add in new controllers to those sites. So that from your one dashboard, from wherever you are in the world, you can manage all your clients' Wi-Fi network and Wi-Fi infrastructure. So if someone calls you with a problem, you don't have to go there physically. You can simply go to your dashboard, open the drop down, select that client site, and manage their entire network remotely, figure out what the problem is, even restart access points, adopt access points, etc. This makes it very easy for you to remotely troubleshoot, especially for people here who have a number of different clients and a number of different Wi-Fi networks that they are managing. And Sunil, I think you had a question if it's a free or paid service. I'm not sure if you're talking about, if you're talking about the UniFi controller, the UniFi controller is a completely free software. You can download it from our website. You can just go to unificontroller.com. Sorry, I mean, you can Google UniFi controller download and you can find the latest one and download it. Or you can download it and also put it onto a cloud. So the software itself is a completely free software and you will not have to pay for it.
I think Srini, you asked if at all it is a free or paid services. I think you're talking about the AWS or Azure. AWS and Azure are web services, which means they are paid services. They are not free services. However, what we have is we have an option to go ahead and give our free software. If you have an existing instance on those web services, you can simply install them. We can go ahead and install the softwares. However, if at all you do not have the service, you will have to pay for the service, which is from AWS or Azure. That is one of the options that we have provided. Again, you can always have your UniFi controller be on a local machine or a cloud key or a UDM or UDM Pro and access it remotely from unifi.ui.com. We already talked about the sites, right? We talked about sites. Now we talked about sites because we want to have different, different. We have already have a lot of different sites, a lot of different customers where we want to manage them remotely. Now we need to remember that we want to manage them remotely. However, if at all we want to have them on different sites, we need to make sure that there is connectivity from your controller to that particular site, either through site-to-site VPN or maybe some kind of port forwarding or something like that, which would have an access to the controller to the sites which are not local to the controller. This is more to do with something called as remote manageability or L3 manageability. All you need to do is adopt a device. When we talk about adopting a device, we are basically putting up all the settings from the controller to a particular access point or a UniFi device, which could be a switch as well as a UniFi security gateway. Adoption is a process of taking on board a particular device onto the UniFi network.
So when you have a UniFi controller online and you have add additional devices, those devices will automatically show up in the UniFi controller and you can simply just go, it'll be saying pending adoption. You can simply just go and click on the adopt button and the device will be adopted. There's a lot more information on this online and we'll be sending out some more helpful links after the webinar is done. Obviously, we can't go into the details of every single thing right now because we have a limited time, but we will be sending out more information on how you can adopt a UniFi device if this is your first time doing that.
To simply understand, adoption process is a process of having a controller, onto the same network, or maybe having a connected network or some kind of connectivity between the UniFi devices and the controller. So if at all you have a connectivity between the devices and the controller, the devices would show up as pending adoption and you can simply adopt them so that you can have all the settings from the controller moved on to the UniFi devices. Using the controller, we also have a lot of options of creating different SSIDs. So we have options to create multiple WLAN groups. Now, WLAN groups are basically a group of SSIDs which can be broadcasted by a particular radio on an access point. Now, we can have multiple WLAN groups. However, a WLAN group can only have up to 8 or up to 4 SSIDs which can be created under one WLAN group. If at all you're using wireless uplink, the restriction of creating an SSID onto a particular radio or a particular access point is for SSIDs per WLAN group. WLAN group is nothing but a group of SSIDs which can be broadcasted, by an access point or by a radio from an access point. When I keep saying radio, I mean to say that since we have these access points which have dual radios, you can have different SSIDs broadcasted from a 2.4 gigahertz radio on that access point, and different set of SSIDs broadcasted from the 5 gigahertz radio that we have on the access point.
So this simple screenshot here, which is a screenshot from the controller, we'll be going to the controller now to see where exactly this is done. So in the UniFi controller, you can simply go to settings, which is at the bottom left. And in here opens up all the settings of your UniFi controller. In settings, you can go to wireless network and see your different WLAN groups here, where you can edit them as well. So for example, in a situation like this where you may have an admin, a corporate, and a guest WLAN group, you may have different needs for the different groups. You may want different security settings. You may have different user groups added to it. You can even add WLAN schedule. What does that mean? So for example, if you want certain Wi-Fi networks to only be on at certain times, so for example, say you have a office where you have a lobby network and you don't want the lobby network to be on after 8 p.m. because there's no need and you don't want anyone logging into that network after 8 p.m. You can simply enable a WLAN schedule there and choose at what times these SSIDs will be live. You can also do other things like combining the 2.4 and 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi names into one, or you can have them separate.
So the different SSIDs that we create, there is always an option to go ahead and set those SSIDs on different VLANs. So if in case you want to have a particular SSID being broadcasted and have a different VLAN for that particular SSIDs, you can always set that up. Different options relating to the SSIDs is also MAC filtering. You can certainly turn on MAC filtering, where you could go ahead and simply add devices which is going to be like a whitelist. You know the people that are going to be connected, and you do not want anybody else to connect to that network. You can go ahead and simply create a whitelist of the different devices, add a list of MAC addresses. On the other side, if at all you want somebody not to connect to your network, you can certainly add a blacklist over there. There's also option of radius authentication, which can be done through a radius server. The radius server profile would be created if you have a USG. You can create a radius profile on the USG itself.
So it's always good practice to create WLAN groups if you have different kinds of user groups for things like hotels, for offices where you have guests connecting. Sometimes you may want the office admin to have a separate network, maybe the office managing directors to be on a separate network. You can always manage your SSIDs through WLAN groups, so it's definitely recommended to use this feature in the UniFi controller.
When we talk about different SSIDs, we also talk about why we want to create a separate SSID for the management group. Why do we want to create a different SSID for guest? There might be requirement that we would need to provide a lower throughput to a guest, or maybe give a higher throughput to a corporate or a management network. So the next option that we have on our controller is to create different user groups. The user groups basically have an option to go ahead and create bandwidth limitations, the kind of speed limitations that we have. So you can certainly set up a particular user group and assign it to a particular SSID. Again, there are different options which are available on the controller. Since this controller is a controller which would manage your security gateway, your switches, as well as your UniFi access points. There are different options over here which would be helpful. So you can go ahead and turn on the DPI engine which we have on the controller itself. For this, you would require USG to be on your network. You can create failover links, which is again required by the security gateway. You can also have internet connection sharing. You can also have port forwarding. I think Pranav already talked about advanced firewall rules which can be created. Again, these firewall rules would be only applicable if at all you have a unified security gateway. If you do not have a unified security gateway, these options are absolutely of no use because they would not be implemented on a third-party device which we have.
So once again, if you look at the UniFi controller out here, in the settings tab, you can see a number of different options here for routing and firewall, for port forwarding. You can also look at deep packet inspection, set up restrictions. So these are all really helpful if you have a UniFi Security Gateway or a UniFi Security Gateway Pro on your network. Of course, this includes the UDM Pro as well. And as mentioned earlier, we also have something called user groups. It's really helpful here when you want to set bandwidth limits. So for example, say you have an office which has one managing director who's always complaining about slow Wi-Fi, and the reason there is because you have people who are in the cafeteria who are streaming YouTube while they're eating lunch. You obviously don't want that issue to happen. So you would create a separate user group for high priority clients, and you may create a separate user group for clients, say in the lobby or clients in the cafeteria that don't need large bandwidth limits, and you can always set bandwidth upload and download limits here.
So you can create n number of user groups. Again, this is scalable for different kind of networks, different kind of requirements. You can create n number of user groups with different speeds, with different bandwidth locations. And all of these user groups can then be assigned to a particular Wi-Fi network or a SSID which we have created under the wireless network.
As you can see here, for each of your SSID, you can then select which user group you want to be assigning it to. So for the admin SSID, you may want to add the user group that has the largest bandwidth, but for a guest SSID, you may want to add the guest user group so you can manage the guests' upload and download bandwidth limits.
I think somebody asked a question about having, around 3,000 users in auditorium. Not really sure who that person was, but I'm really sorry I did not capture the name. But just to answer your question, if at all you want to have different, a huge number of users, can you go ahead and load balance? Yes, there is an option to load balance a number of clients per radio that you have on your device. So you can simply create a WLAN group, which would be a WLAN group which would be for a specific load balancing option where you can have 20 users only connect to a particular radio, and then if at all there is more than 20 users, what will happen is it should connect to the other radios which are available. So one thing important to remember about load balancing is that all our devices will never deny services. When I say never deny services, that even if at all there is a 20 user limit, it might try to connect to a 21st user because there is no other access point which is able to provide the network. So whenever you're planning for a load balancing situation, you need to make sure that you have enough number of access points around the clients so that they can be connected to different users, so that the load balancing can be done seamlessly. If you have maybe just one or two access points and the maximum users, maximum bandwidth that we have set is 20, and there are like 45 people want to connect, the access points will not block those clients. However, they will keep kicking out clients with lower signal, which means that is going to create an instability in your Wi-Fi network. So while planning for load balancing on access points, please make sure you have enough number of access points which can be used for providing access to the band limited numbers. So you would have to create a WLAN group for setting up the load balancing. Just give me a second.
So another reason why load balancing is used is in areas where you can often expect clients to stick to a particular device. So say for example, you have a large room where a client is entering and there's one access point at the very entrance. It would be pretty common for all clients to connect to that one access point. And then what could happen is that the client then roams around the entire large exhibition room, but for some reason is still connected to that one access point at the entrance of the room. So in this case, load balancing is a really helpful feature because then it forces that one client to actually go ahead and connect to another access point that it is closer to. So as you can see in the screenshot here, when creating a new WLAN group, you can balance the number of clients per radio and set the limit you want it to. We've spoken about user groups. User groups obviously are used to set bandwidth limits. So if you have different kinds of clients, you have guest clients, you have corporate clients, you have management, and you want them to have different bandwidth limits, it's always helpful to add different user groups to the SSIDs so that those clients can connect to their own user groups and get the necessary upload and download speed. As you can see in the image on the right, the corporate SSID has unlimited upload and download speeds, whereas the guest SSID has been limited to 512 kbps upload and 2048 download.
One thing to remember about creating user groups, the only thing that you could do with the user group is to set up bandwidth limits. You cannot set up a limit of downloads. Like you cannot set up a user group to have downloads of only up to 1 gigabit or 1 gigabit of data file from the internet. So that is not available. Only the bandwidth usage is available under the user groups. To answer your question, Asrar, no, it does not control non-UniFi access points.
Everything we're talking about here is for UniFi devices only. The UniFi controller will only be able to manage, configure, customize, etc. UniFi products, which includes our UniFi access points, switches, security gateways, etc.
I think also the next thing that we've already talked about a lot is wireless uplink. So just to give you an idea about what wireless uplink basically means is in simple terms mesh network, which means a wireless access point would connect to another wireless access point wirelessly. In our proprietary, we've called it wireless uplink. So wireless uplink mesh outdoor APs that we have are the best for wireless uplink. This is in scenarios where there is no possible way that we can go ahead and drag cables to certain situations where you have car parks, we have a garden, a lawn where you cannot have a Wi-Fi, a wired cable go onto, like across a pool, historic buildings, public places. So in all these scenarios, we would require wireless meshing, which means wirelessly connecting one access point to another access point and then providing Wi-Fi access to the clients.
One really important thing to remember with wireless uplink is that it's always recommended to add a wire whenever possible, because wireless uplinks will always lead to a throughput loss. So for every device that is uplinked wirelessly to another device, there will be a significant throughput loss. Again,
You can turn on wireless uplink under the site. You can turn it on over here or disable wireless uplink. So if in case you are not using wireless uplinks, you can go ahead and simply turn this feature off, which means wirelessly you would not be able to connect another access point to the existing wireless access point that you have.
once again, this is in the settings section of the UniFi controller under site.
To answer your question, Dheeraj, can we set 2 GB per day download data for one user? Now, the direct answer to this would be yes and no. So you can set up a 2 GB per download data for a guest and not for a user. When we talk about user, we will not be able to do it because these are users and we don't want to do that for a user. But for a guest, like if at all you're having a hotspot situation where you have having a Wi-Fi network in, let's say, McDonald's or Starbucks, in places where you can offer Wi-Fi network for guests. There you can set up the bandwidth limitation of 2 GB or 1 GB or maybe more than that, or maybe different uses like maybe one-time usage, maybe 1 day, 1 week usage. You can have all that done by the guest network, which is our next thing, which is basically the next feature that we have available for the Wi-Fi network. Guest portal is a portal which can create a kind of a guest network for your clients, where you tend to have them connect to your Wi-Fi network. However, you do not want them to be users. You want them to be connected, separately, isolated from other users, because guest environment is basically an environment where you do not know each other and you do not want to share or have access to different clients connected to it. So guest control is an option to go ahead and create a guest portal for your network. You can set up guest portals in different ways. There is an option to go ahead and set up with a no authentication. You can set up simple password. You can have a hotspot. When we talk about hotspot, this is what I was talking about. You can create simple vouchers, which could be for different type of usage, like maybe 1 GB data per day or maybe 1 day use case. You can use hotspot for that. Also, there are certain situations like maybe hotels where you would require the clients to pay for Wi-Fi network. You can simply select a hotspot over here, put in your payment gateway, and ask the customers to go ahead and pay, from their credit cards over there. So that option is also available. The hotspot manager, again, is a separate thing altogether. This manager can help you create vouchers, different use case vouchers. Like I said, you can set up bandwidth limits. You can set up the download limits per day or per session. Different things are available over here. This can be done through the UniFi controller and also from the UniFi app that we have.
So one helpful thing here is that there's a separate hotspot manager application which you can actually use independent of the controller. So you can give someone else, say if you're a hotel, you can give the hotel reception access to the hotspot manager itself without giving them access to the controller. So they won't have access to change anything in the UniFi controller, but they can still have access to the hotspot manager where they can create vouchers, print out vouchers, and create different settings for vouchers for guests. So this is another free software that UniFi provides, which integrates with the UniFi controller very seamlessly and enables you to create a very easy hotspot network and have clients either use unique codes to log into the Wi-Fi or have them pay for their Wi-Fi through a payment gateway. So all this can once again be done on the UniFi controller. So if you go to demo.ui.com, you can simply go to settings, and then go to guest control, where you will be required to enable your guest portal. Again, one thing very important to know is that for your guest portal to be working, you would need your controller to be online. So you have to make sure you have a controller that's running at the time. You can set different authentication methods, set expiration of the guest portal, and there are a number of different customizations you can make to the portal where you can add your own logo, add your own information, add your own marketing material, etc. You can also create your own separate guest portal and have this guest portal redirect to your own guest page, which then you can integrate your SMS gateway, payment gateway, and a number of different features to it.
So there is also an option for you to go ahead and set up your own external, server, which would be acting as a guest portal, where you can go ahead and have SMS authentications like OTP authentications, which some users might require, where you want to give an OTP to the customer's phone, and then add that OTP as a password to connect to the network.
So before we go to the next section, I think we're going to just give a couple minutes to see if people have any questions. This was a very important section about the UniFi controller. So before we go into the different management features in the controller, we will just give some time to look at the questions you guys have.
Sunil, you had a question relating to your Wi-Fi fluctuating and connecting back again. I don't think so that we should get into troubleshooting a particular problem, but for you to understand that we have a support team which you can email to or maybe chat with us. We have 24/7 chat support as well as email support. You can send out an email to support@ui.com, and we can certainly address to your problems that you have relating to your Wi-Fi disconnecting again and again.
But Dharmendra, in reference to your question about the fast roaming option, it supports 802.1R, which is the IEEE standard. We have done some modifications so that the transition, that's the BSS transition from one AP to another AP, happens more smoothly than how it works on APs that belong to other brands. Yogesh, in reference to your question, I believe you're asking about multiple VLANs on an access point. If that's a question, yes, you can tag each VLAN, each SSID with a different VLAN when configuring the wireless network. Dharmendra, about your question about connecting high performance clients to 5 gigahertz, when a client connects to an SSID, okay, it will randomly connect either to a 2.4 or a 5 gigahertz SSID that you have created. But if you have this option enabled, the controller or the AP will force the client to connect to a 5 gigahertz network if the client is able to support 5 gigahertz. So that way your 2.4 gigahertz network will not be that loaded. Right, Vineet, yes, you will need the USG if you are planning to use radius authentication, because the USG is the device which is hosting the free radius server. and without that you would not be able to perform radius authentication on any of the other devices. So if you want a setup which needs radius assigned VLANs or radius authentication, you will need to have a USG in that side.
Also, the controller should be on that side. Yeah, controller basically should be running.
Right, access point retry rate, Ashish, that was the question. It's the number of times a packet has, when it's sent over the network, if there is any issue or the packet does not reach the destination, it has to be resent. So that's the number of retries the AP will perform to get the packet across to the destination or the host.
And Junaid, yes, there is an Android app. Wi-Fi Man is available as on Android as well as iOS. So you can definitely use that app for planning your network setup. Sunil, for support, the email for support is support@ui.com. I'll type it on there. It's a 24/7 helpline where you can access our support team through email as well as chat in order to get troubleshooting on your Wi-Fi. We'll be talking about support options in more detail later. So now we're going to talk about ongoing network management. So once you've set up your UniFi network, how can you use the controller to manage it, view it on an ongoing basis?
Another band steering option that we are talking about is as good as what we talked about, forcing a client connecting to 5 gigahertz. So that is another way of having band steering done from the access point side, where the access points will go ahead and have the clients which are capable of 5 gigahertz speeds connect to 5 gigahertz radius, so that the whole network is a better network where I have faster clients connecting to your Wi-Fi network, and then the overall throughput, overall efficiency of your network becomes higher.
So going back to the UniFi controller, we're going to start on the dashboard page. As you can see on top here, you can switch between different sites. This demo controller, which you can always access at demo.ui.com, has 3 sites uploaded to it. We can go to the FedEx forum, which is one of the sites, which is a basketball stadium.
All right, so again, the main requirement of having a controller is to also understand what exactly is happening in the network. So the main dashboard that you see on your screens right now is basically a dashboard which will tell you what exactly is happening, how many clients are connected, how many access points are working, how many access points are not working, how many guests are connected. If there is any kind of switches, if there is any kind of security gateway in your network, how exactly is the utilization of the of your internet capacity. So different things which are available over here, and also more things which can be added to your network by creating custom dashboard. By clicking on that plus sign down over there, you can simply add a custom dashboard and create separate widgets which will help you add more things for management purposes, to look into your purposes, to monitor your network.
As you can see, there are also 2 themes. You can change it to a dark theme if that's something you prefer.
The second tab on the controller is the statistics tab. This statistics tab is basically has different options for you to go ahead and give information about the overall connectivity of your network. How many clients are connected per SSID? What exactly is the top access points which are being used? Which client is using them? the most bandwidth. These are different things which you would require when you're managing a network, to find out and to make sure that your network is stable, and to make sure that you understand that there is something which is going okay, or something which is going bad, or something going great, for you to understand if at all there is any kind of changes required in your network. So if in case that there is an access point which is being utilized the maximum, you would need to make sure that there is another access points to be used, or maybe deployed in that particular network. It's simple for us to understand that if at all we know that there is going to be a lot of users connected to a particular area, you would require more than one access point, so that you have better connectivity and better throughputs, for all those clients. So yes, as we talked about software-defined networking, this is basically a software which will tell you, which will go ahead and let you manage your whole network, which will configure your Wi-Fi network, your wired network, which is from the UniFi switch, the security gateway. You can manage the whole UniFi network through the controller, as well as look into it, find out what exactly is happening good, what is going wrong, so that you can get information about your network and work onto it, accordingly. The other tabs that you see, you would see the different tabs. We already checked out the tab which was the maps, where you could go ahead and upload a floor plan, add access points over there, to see if at all you've got the best coverage, add a designer plan so that you can add different materials like walls, glass. So that is already available on the maps icon. The fourth icon that you see is basically the devices. The number of devices which would be listed over here would be managed by the controller, and some devices, if at all they're in the default state, they would show up as pending adoption, which means that you can go ahead and adopt them and work on them, so that they can be using the same kind of settings which are present for the other access points. There is a direct option to go ahead and upgrade an access point, a switch, or a security gateway from this tab itself. The next tab will show you the number of clients which are connected. There are different options to go ahead and have a filter for this. You can click on the filter, so that you get to know which client is connected to a particular access point, what exactly is the SSID used by a particular access point. So you have different options to again monitor your network, to find out what is exactly happening, what exactly is the activity which a particular client is doing. Again, to get into details, you can go ahead and go on to demo.ui.com to see how exactly the client's tab also works. Insights tab is a tab where it will give you deep insights about how the network has been. Mostly it will have the clients which were already connected, not connected at this point of time. It will also show up some access points which are neighboring. You have situations where you have your access point connected, but there are many more access points around your area which would be broadcasting. So this basically is a kind of a detection mechanism of the access points that we have. They detect that there is another access point which is nearby, maybe using the same frequency that we are, or same channel that we are using, which tells us that probably we should switch to a different channel, so that we get a better connectivity and less of interference. There is an events tab which will give you details about what exactly is happening. Sometimes a client is roaming from one particular access point to another access points. If there is a new access point connected, or sorry, a new client connected, it will give you details. Basically, any kind of events that is happening in your networks will show up over here under the events tab. If you check on the screen right now, you have a question that basically is a place where you can go ahead and start a chat with our team, which is 24/7.
So now we're just going to quickly talk about some common issues that people face.
So there have been very common issues relating to managing our UniFi networks. The most common issues is the access point or the UniFi switch adoption problems. The main reasons for an access point not able to adopt onto a particular controller boils down to two main things. One is probably there is a firmware mismatch. When I say firmware mismatch, some of the access points have an older firmware in it, and the controller that we use is the most advanced one. So there is obviously a mismatch of the controller firmwares and the access point firmwares. This means that the access point will not be adopted until there is a matching firmware uploaded onto the access points, and then once that is done, you should be able to adopt the access points. So it's basically a very common issue that we kind of keep facing, as far as support is concerned. The second main reason of access point adoption issues is, maybe the access points are unable to get the DHCP IPs. They are unable to reach the controller itself. Sometimes it would not show up on the network for various reasons. There could be a reason that the Windows firewall is blocking some kind of ports which require your access points to report back to the controller. And those are the reasons basically the devices are unable to reach to the controller, and that's why the adoption fails or it is not available for our adoption. So two things to keep in mind when you have any kind of adoption issues relating to switch or maybe access points both over here, is to look at the firmware which is which is uploaded onto the access point or the device, and the firmware which is required by the controller. The second thing is the connectivity between the controller and the devices. The next common issue we obviously, I mean, this is the most common issue for probably all the Wi-Fi devices, slow speed issues. So when we are having our customers having problems when we have deployed a particular network and the customers complain that there's slow speeds, we are unable to find better throughputs for clients. So three important things to understand and to make sure that we know what exactly is happening is to find out what exactly is the problem relating to the slow speeds. Is it on a particular frequency which has a problem, or is it on a particular client which has a problem? And then accordingly we have to deal with the problem. So let's say if at all we say that the clients on 2.4 gigahertz have very low speeds. Now we need to understand that 2.4 gigahertz already has lesser speeds. However, a lot of consumer-based devices use 2.4 gigahertz frequency, which means it gets a lot crowded, which means there is a great possibility of having interferences on the 2.4 gigahertz. You need to make sure that the frequencies used by the 2.4 gigahertz radio is the best frequency, and to check the channel frequency interference, you can certainly use the Wi-Fi app, the Wi-Fi Man app, which will tell you which is the best channel which can be used and has lesser number of clients, so that there are better speeds and no interferences with that. If there is a problem relating to 5 gigahertz, moving to a different channel frequencies, checking it on the Wi-Fi Man app is the best way to go ahead and tackle that kind of problem. Also, if in case it's related to a client, some customer says that there is a problem related to my Android devices. The Android devices are very slow. However, my iOS devices are fine. My Mac OS is very slow, but my Windows is very fine. Different scenarios. So we need to tackle these problems according to the type of clients. We have to narrow down to a particular situation to find out what exactly is going wrong. And if in case overall the access point is providing bad speeds to everything 5 gigahertz, maybe 2.4 gigahertz, we've changed channels. We've seen that the clients, different clients, or maybe all the clients have the same kind of problem. Somebody said that there are intermittent connectivity issues relating to a particular access point. Then we would have to look at the side where it is going to the wired network. Is the wired network fine? We need to find out if at all, if connecting to your network with a wire is the speeds better. So you need to, there are different ways to look at slow speed problem. We have a very good article which is available for connectivity as well as slow speeds on Wi-Fi network. Gives a lot of in-depth information about what are the things that can be checked out. And we will certainly go ahead and share that article link for you all. The third most important or most common issue that we have is forgetting of the controller password. To remind you guys that the controller password is a very important thing. If at all you do not set up the SMTP server settings on the controller, and you have not turned on the cloud access on your controller, which means you can access your controller from unifi.ui.com, you will not have access to the controller. There's absolutely no other way, to recover the password from the controller if the SMTP server is not set up. So best practices to make sure that you know the password, maybe jot it down. Sometimes we have come across issues where the customers use these password collector applications. Sometimes that is also a problem. The password collector applications also do not take the right kind of password. So make sure that you know the right password and never forget the passwords. And that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it for the common issues.
So talking about support, obviously that's something that a lot of you are here for, and it's a very important part. We have two main forums where clients can get support from us. Number one is we have a very good support page. If you go to help.ui.com, which I'll actually do right now with you guys. So if you go to help.ui.com, you can see that we have support sections and support articles written for every kind of device. Here I'm going to click on UniFi Network, since that's what we're talking about today. And you can see you have help articles for all kinds of issues, right from getting started and device adoption to UniFi configuration for various UniFi devices, system management, troubleshooting, and within each section as well, you have a number of different articles which covers almost every issue you could face. And if, for example, you don't find it here, you can always search out here and find the article that's most relevant to you. In addition, we also have our support team. You can contact our support team from the contact page. Either you can submit a help request via email and you'll get a response via email, or you can also open a live chat and talk to our representatives live. Once again, we have a 24/7 support team here, so you can always feel free to reach out to us if you have any issues with your Ubiquiti network. Second, and all of us more importantly, I want to talk about the community page. The community page is the number one resource you can use to get support regarding Ubiquiti. It's a large community of our users, our partners, our customers, our SIs, our resellers, our distributors, and even our developers are sitting on this page and answering users' questions. So if you go to community.ui.com, you can actually see what the community page is. You can search the community page, or you can even ask your own questions here. So for example, if you searched my UAP AC Pro not adopting, just an example, you will probably get a number of different people who've had similar problems with the UAP AC Pro, and you can select that and see what has happened there. This is the quickest and the best way because you have users from across the world giving suggestions and ideas. And out here, as you see, we also have a Ubiquiti support engineer who is answering questions. So this is once again, the best place you can get help from, because whatever issue you have, chances are that someone else has also faced that issue in the past, and you can look at the community posts to get answers from that issue. If you don't see your issue here, you can always create a new topic and talk about what your issue is. And if you're still not happy with the response in the community group, you can always reach out to our support team on email or live chat. I really want to stress that people should be looking at the community page, not just for support issues, but also for stories. You can actually go ahead and see different people's Ubiquiti setups. We actually have one here from India itself set up here, a UniFi deployment in an office space by Akanksha Digital. So you can also upload your own stories out here, your own case studies with your own pictures and details on the community. And you can always reach out to us. You can reach out to me directly if you are interested in submitting a case study. Then you can I can work with you to draft the case study, put the pictures, and even publish it here if you like. This is a global page, and by publishing your stories on this page, you can get global awareness about your company, about the deployments you'll have done, etc. Finally, we also have a Ubiquiti WhatsApp group. This is a WhatsApp group just for India. We have a number of our customers in India, partners in India who are on the WhatsApp group. So it's a really good way for you to get access to the rest of the Ubiquiti community in India. So highly encourage you to join the WhatsApp group. I also am constantly updating the WhatsApp group with new information, new help articles, new products that are coming out for Ubiquiti. So it's a really good forum for you to use for India. So definitely recommend everyone to download the group. To join the group. You can simply go to ubnt.link/ui-india and download the WhatsApp, and then join the WhatsApp group there. So that's all we have for right now. That's the presentation. We're going to leave some time for questions and answers right now. So you can use the live chat option to ask questions for UniFi on this. At the same time, I'm going to once again post the registration link. I'm going to write it out here actually. So if you haven't yet, please register so we have your email address and we can reach out to you with any helpful content that we're going to follow up with after this.